She didn't scream. She didn't beg for help. Warden Lisa Caldwell just dropped, face first, onto the prison corridor floor she'd walked with authority for over a decade. It was a normal Tuesday, morning rounds, radios buzzing, inmates murmuring behind locked steel bars, and then, without warning, she collapsed. Officers rushed to her side. The infirmary was called. For a few seconds, time stood still inside Monroe Correctional Facility. No visible injuries, no signs of trauma. But Lisa was burning up from the inside. By the time the ambulance arrived, she was barely conscious. Her breathing, shallow. Her pulse, faint. But what came next would change everything. The blood work didn't just raise questions, it ignited a firestorm. Lisa Caldwell, 48, decorated officer, mother of 2, married to a retired Marine, tested HIV positive, advanced stage. But the real shock wasn't the diagnosis, it was the timeline. The exposure hadn't happened recently. This had been living inside her, for years. And it didn't take long before the whispers turned into a name. Marcus Dean. A 32-year-old inmate convicted of murder, life sentence, no parole. He was smooth, calculated, charming, the kind of man who could make you forget your own rules, if only for a moment. But that moment cost lives, because this wasn't just a medical emergency. This was seduction. This was betrayal. And eventually, this was murder. 3 people dead, 1 hidden secret, and a question no one could answer. How did it start? And why did it end in blood? Before we go any deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos, because what really happened between Lisa Caldwell and Marcus Dean will haunt you. Lisa Caldwell was the kind of warden who didn't believe in shortcuts or second chances. She wore her uniform like armor, crisp and precise, with a face that told you she'd seen everything and forgiven very little. A respected leader, feared by the inmates and admired by her staff. To many she was a role model, a protector, a woman who stood taller than the bars around her. But what most people didn't know was that she was also lonely. Deeply, privately, silently lonely. Then came Marcus Dean. He was 32 years old, convicted of murder at just 19, a life sentence, no parole. But inside those walls, Marcus wasn't just another inmate. He was charming, articulate, and dangerously observant. The kind of man who could make anyone feel like the center of the universe, even a warden with everything to lose. He knew exactly when to listen, when to flatter, when to act like he needed saving. That's where the questions begin. How did a disciplined, no-nonsense warden fall for a man society had written off? What exactly happened between them behind those steel doors? Who ended up dead, and who pulled the trigger? And how did a hidden virus, passed in secret, spark a chain of events that ended with blood on the floor and a gun in someone's hand? You're not just watching a crime story, you're stepping into a mystery, one that unravels piece by piece, moment by moment. And by the end, you'll be asking yourself the one question no one ever wants to face. If it were you, would you have seen it coming? Lisa Caldwell was 48 years old, a mother of 2, married to a retired Marine, and known throughout Monroe Correctional Facility as the kind of warden who didn't tolerate nonsense from inmates or her own staff. Her life was rigid, orderly, and tightly controlled. At home, her husband had grown accustomed to her absence, both physical and emotional. Her kids were grown, distant, polite. Lisa loved them, but motherhood had always come second to her job. She wasn't the warm or nurturing type. She showed her care through structure, discipline, and the illusion of stability. She spent more time pacing prison corridors than sitting at her own kitchen table. In her world, silence was normal. Love was rare. Trust, nearly extinct. She didn't laugh much. She didn't cry. If she ever did, it was behind a locked door. The uniform was her identity, and the prison, her second home. And then there was Marcus Dean. Convicted at 22 for armed robbery and homicide, Marcus had already spent 10 years behind bars. Before prison, he'd been a high school football star, quarterback, full-ride offers, charm that melted rooms. But charm doesn't erase bullets. During a robbery gone wrong, a clerk was shot. Marcus claimed he didn't pull the trigger, but the court disagreed. Life without parole. In prison, he evolved, became someone else, or at least pretended to. He was well-spoken, articulate, respectful. He read constantly, exercised daily, studied the officers like chess pieces. Over time, he was rewarded. Extra chores, access to restricted areas, quiet nods of approval from guards who said he wasn't like the others. That's how he got close. He'd pass Warden Caldwell in the hallway, hold a door, deliver a report, offer a nod, nothing more. But his silence said what words couldn't. He saw her. Not as an officer, not as a mother, not even as a wife, just a woman. At first she ignored it, chalked it up to manipulation. She'd seen it before, flattery disguised as obedience. But Marcus didn't push. He waited, watched, chose his moments. A soft compliment here, a quick joke there. Just enough to be noticed, but never enough to be questioned. And then, she started looking for him. In the sea of inmates, she noticed his absence when he wasn't around. She noticed his presence when he was. He'd hand her a folder and brush her hand, just briefly. She'd freeze, he'd smile, and nothing was said. Lisa knew better. She knew every policy, every protocol. She had lectured officers for far less than what she was beginning to feel. But she told herself it wasn't wrong. Not yet. It was just attention, just conversation, just a human connection in a place designed to strip that away. But Marcus, he was already ahead of her. He wasn't just talking. He was calculating, testing boundaries, measuring responses, and with each encounter she gave him just a little more trust, a little more space, a little more of herself, and eventually, too much. Because Lisa Caldwell didn't just bend the rules, she crossed a line she could never uncross. And she did it for a man who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. It started with eye contact, that lingering moment during weekly inspections, where Lisa Caldwell found herself pausing just a little longer at Marcus Dean's cell. He always stood tall, respectful, hands behind his back, never too eager, never too bold, just present, calm, and sometimes quietly amused. She didn't realize at first that she'd begun to look forward to those inspections. She chalked it up to habit, routine, the structure she always relied on, but deep down, it was something else. Entertainment. Marcus had a way of making the ordinary feel intriguing. A quick comment about the smell of bleach in the hall, a joke about a broken vending machine, a well-timed compliment wrapped in sarcasm. He never crossed the line, not openly. But Lisa felt it. She felt the shift in her own thinking, the way her chest tightened when she passed his unit, the way her eyes scanned the hallway for him, even when she had no reason to be there. Then came the notes, folded perfectly, slipped into files, hidden in broom closets. At first, they were simple. Hope today's better than yesterday. You deserve more sleep. Then deeper. You ever wonder how you got here? I wish I met you on the outside. He began writing poetry, real poetry, lines about loneliness, time, guilt, hope. It was vulnerable, unexpected, disarming. Lisa kept the first 3 notes in her desk drawer. The rest, she tore up, flushed, or buried in old case files she knew no one would check. She told herself it was nothing, just words, just boredom. But nothing in that prison happened without intent, especially not with Marcus Dean. Soon after, the patterns changed. Certain blind spots in the hallway cameras suddenly malfunctioned. Logs from the night shift had small errors, timestamps slightly off, locations swapped. No red flags at first, just static glitches and sleepy guards. But those windows created a pattern of silence. a rhythm that Marcus and Lisa learned to trust. She started letting him into her office after hours, a few minutes here, 10 minutes there, sometimes just to talk, sometimes not. The door stayed locked, the lights stayed dim. One night, he reached for her hand, and she didn't pull away. A few nights later, he kissed her, and she let him. From there, the descent was quick. She started bringing him things: protein bars, socks, magazines, then t-shirts, cell phone chargers, things she could justify until she couldn't. She covered her tracks meticulously, altering search logs, adjusting delivery records, rerouting her inspection times to avoid suspicion. Her routine, once rigid, became flexible, bent entirely around moments when she could see him. And the more she gave, the more he asked, gently, softly, never demanding, just suggesting. And each time she said yes, because by now she wasn't just breaking rules, she was addicted to him, to the feeling of being needed, wanted, appreciated, to the illusion that this, whatever this was, made her feel alive again. Then, one night, in the quiet of her locked office, Marcus looked her in the eyes and said something that stopped her breath cold. He told her he loved her, and then he said, "I need to tell you a secret." It didn't take much, just one overheard sentence. An inmate from C Block, mopping the corridor near Lisa's office late one night, caught the sound of two voices, too soft to make out the words, but too intimate to ignore. One belonged to Marcus Dean, the other, unmistakably, Lisa Caldwell. He didn't think much of it at first, but a week later he heard them again. Same time, same place. Laughter this time. The kind of laughter that doesn't belong between a warden and a lifer. He waited until morning, then quietly slipped a note under a guard's door. Within 48 hours, Lisa was called in by Internal Affairs. She sat straight, spoke clearly, denied everything. No flinching, no hesitation. Said she was being targeted for being too strict. Said inmates like to invent stories when their privileges were cut. She even turned it back on the investigators, asked for proof. There wasn't any, not yet, but the seed had been planted. 2 days later, that same inmate, the one who'd sent the anonymous note, was found dead in the prison showers. Slumped over, barely clothed. Blood at the nose, internal bleeding. Cause of death listed as an overdose. Synthetic opioids, allegedly smuggled in through the kitchen staff. The case was closed in less than 24 hours, but inside those walls, no one believed it. The rumors started quietly, then spread like wildfire. First it was whispers about Lisa and Marcus, then about special treatment, then about a possible pregnancy. Inmates speculated wildly. Guards shared knowing looks but said nothing. Everyone knew something wasn't right, but no one had the proof. And then came the medical logs. Lisa had missed 3 checkups in a row. The prison nurse, assigned to confidential staff screenings, submitted a concern to the medical director. Said Lisa seemed off, fatigued, anxious. When she finally did show up, her blood work raised flags. Something wasn't right. Irregularities in her immune markers. The labs were rerun, then rerun again. The final result left the room in stunned silence. Lisa Caldwell tested positive for HIV, but that wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. Because Lisa didn't use drugs, Lisa didn't have any known risk factors. Lisa was married. Lisa was careful. Always had been. Always followed the rules. So the question tore through the prison like a lightning bolt. How? From who? And how long had she known? Inmates talked. Staff gossiped. Investigators circled. And for the first time in her career, Lisa Caldwell had no control. Not over the narrative, not over the whispers, not even over her own body. And still, no one knew what had really happened behind those prison walls. But now, everyone wanted to know. The results shattered everything. After weeks of whispered speculation, hidden files, and unauthorized medical requests, the truth finally emerged from the silence. Marcus Dean was HIV positive. The diagnosis was clear, confirmed through multiple tests and logged into the system under a flagged health alert. But what stunned investigators most wasn't just the positive status, it was the timeline. The virus had not been contracted during his time at Monroe Correctional. In fact, based on the viral load and antibody presence, Marcus had likely been infected before his incarceration. Possibly years before the trial, before the sentencing, before the affair, before Lisa Caldwell ever laid eyes on him. To the Department of Corrections, it was a medical alert. To Lisa, it was a death sentence, because she too had tested positive. The moment the pieces clicked together, when the dates were matched, when the window of infection became undeniable, Lisa Caldwell stopped sleeping. She stopped functioning. A fog wrapped around her mind. Her sense of control vanished. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. This was personal. This was irreversible. And worst of all, it felt like betrayal. 1 week after receiving her results, she confronted Marcus. It wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no slammed doors. The confrontation took place during routine grounds inspection, somewhere between the chapel and the education wing. It was a place with no working camera. Lisa had made sure of that. She stepped toward him slowly. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask how he was. She just looked at him and asked, "Did you know?" Marcus, cool as ever, tilted his head. He didn't answer. She pressed again, her voice sharper now. "Did you know you were positive before this, before us?" His answer came like a blade. "You're asking the wrong question. Maybe you should be asking yourself who else you've been with." Lisa's chest caved in. It wasn't just denial, it was gaslighting, blame shifting. He turned her pain into a weapon, into guilt. She tried to hold her ground, demanded the truth, demanded remorse. But Marcus never blinked. He smirked, almost amused. Then he leaned closer and whispered, "You broke the rules, not me." That night, Lisa drove for hours. She didn't go home. She ended up outside her sister's apartment at 2 a.m., standing on the porch in a sweatshirt and slippers, trembling like a leaf. Her sister opened the door and saw a woman she didn't recognize, pale, sunken, hollowed out. Lisa fell apart in her arms. They stayed up till dawn. Lisa spilled everything. How it started, how deep it went. How she had slowly unraveled from a woman of authority to a prisoner of her own obsession. She didn't cry when she spoke about losing her job or her marriage. But she broke when she said the words, "I don't know how long I've been dying." Later that week, she left a voicemail for her best friend. Her voice was quiet, tired, defeated. She apologized for pulling away, for shutting everyone out. Then she said something that stopped the woman in her tracks. "I thought I could control it, but now I see. He was never the one locked up. I was." But the fallout was just beginning. The rumors inside the prison spread like a virus of their own. Someone in medical must have talked, or maybe it was Marcus himself. Either way, whispers about Lisa's diagnosis reached the inmates like wildfire. Words like infected, poisoned, and dirty started echoing through the blocks. Then, chaos. Marcus Dean was attacked in the yard. It happened fast, under 3 minutes. Surveillance footage caught only fragments. A flash of fists, a stomp, then silence. By the time the guards reached him, Marcus was face down on the concrete. Blood pooled around his head. His jaw was broken in 2 places, several ribs shattered, one eye completely swollen shut. He was rushed to the infirmary, barely conscious. The doctor said he was lucky to be alive, but luck was running out. An inmate named Daryl Prince came forward 48 hours later. He confessed, said he did it alone, said Marcus had it coming. But then, he said something else. He claimed he was ordered to do it, by Lisa Caldwell. Said she came to him during a shift change. Said she told him Marcus was a threat to her safety and career. That if he wanted early parole, she'd make it happen. All he had to do was send a message. Internal Affairs didn't believe him, at first. But the damage was already done. The allegation made its way into an official report. And that made it real. Lisa denied everything. Again. She told them she barely knew Darryl Prince, that she never spoke to him outside of routine checks, that he was lying. They put her on administrative leave pending further review, but it didn't end there. 3 days later, Darryl Prince was found dead in his cell, slit wrists, blood smeared along the cinderblock wall. No struggle, no weapon. At first glance, it was ruled a suicide, but under his mattress, tucked inside a Bible, was a folded sheet of yellow legal paper. A note. Only 6 words. She made me do it. Forgive me. That changed everything. Lisa Caldwell was no longer just a disgraced official, no longer just a woman with a scandalous affair. Now she was a suspect. 2 inmate deaths, a violent assault, a deadly virus, and a mounting pile of evidence that pointed to a cover-up too twisted to ignore. The system she once controlled had turned against her. The very walls that gave her power were now closing in. And as the media caught wind of the story, Lisa's name left the DOC files and entered the headlines. Warden's secret affair ends in HIV scandal murder. Correctional officer linked to inmate deaths. Lisa Caldwell, the fall of a warden. She had crossed every boundary, broken every oath, and now she stood at the center of a storm of her own making. Her marriage gone, her career destroyed, her health uncertain, and her soul fractured. No appeals, no plea deals, just the slow, crushing weight of consequence. And one lingering question echoing through every dark corner of that facility. Was she a victim or a mastermind? It all unraveled faster than anyone expected. Within days of Darryl Prince's death, Lisa Caldwell's suspension turned into termination. Internal Affairs launched a full investigation into every contact she'd had within the prison system, dating back nearly 5 years. Her digital records were subpoenaed, emails, texts, bank transfers. Nothing was off limits. She was officially charged with abuse of authority, obstruction of justice, and criminal conspiracy related to the assault of inmate Marcus Dean. Then came the mugshot, a former warden, once respected, feared, admired, reduced to a number, a cold intake photo, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Her name was no longer preceded by Ms. or officer. She was now Caldwell, Lisa, defendant. The mugshot went viral. Within hours, it spread across news outlets, social media, prison forums. The face of authority turned scandal, the perfect storm of sex, power, and punishment. But behind the headlines, something far more brutal was happening. Lisa Caldwell was dying. Her health was deteriorating rapidly. The virus that had entered her bloodstream had taken hold, fast and aggressive. Her immune system collapsed. The weight of stress, shame, and untreated trauma only accelerated the spiral. Within 2 weeks of her arrest, she was hospitalized. It started with night sweats. Then came the lesions. Then, the pneumonia. By the time they moved her into the isolation ward, she could no longer walk without assistance. Her once commanding voice was now a whisper, hoarse, weak, almost childlike. At first, no one visited. Not her former colleagues, not her ex-husband, not even her own family. The silence was absolute. So Lisa did the only thing she could. She wrote. She wrote like her life depended on it. Dozens of yellow legal pads filled with uneven handwriting, shaking hands, fevered thoughts, and desperate truth. In those pages, she poured everything. The first time she saw Marcus Dean, how he looked at her like she wasn't invisible, how the loneliness at home turned into a tension in the control room, the moments they shared in secrecy, in closets, behind doors, in staff bathrooms where cameras couldn't reach. The shame she swallowed every day knowing she was violating the oath she'd taken, not just to the system, but to herself. The fear when she missed her period, the panic when the blood tests came back, the rage when Marcus laughed in her face. She admitted to crossing every line, But she denied ever ordering Daryl Prince to attack anyone. "I wasn't trying to cover my tracks," she wrote. "I was trying to hold on to the only thing that made me feel alive." In her final entry, she wrote, "They'll all remember what I did, but not why I did it. I gave everything to the system, but the system never gave anything back. In the end, I broke every rule just to feel something other than invisible, and now I've disappeared completely." 3 days later, Lisa Caldwell died, alone, in a sterile hospital room, from complications related to untreated HIV. Her body was cremated. No public service, no obituary in the paper, just a sealed box of ashes sent to a P.O. box in Texas, claimed 2 weeks later by an unknown person. No name, no message. Case closed. Or so they thought. Because just 2 months after Lisa's death, Marcus Dean was scheduled for a routine transfer from Monroe Correctional to a federal facility in Georgia. It was supposed to be a 6-hour drive, standard protocol, 2 guards, 1 vehicle, no stops. But when the van arrived at its destination, Marcus wasn't alive. His body was slumped forward in the seat, neck twisted unnaturally, bruises along his throat and temple. The guards claimed he had fallen asleep. But paramedics knew better. He had been strangled. There were no witnesses, no signs of struggle, no camera footage inside the transport van, no external trauma that suggested resistance. Just one clear truth: Marcus Dean had been murdered. The 2 correctional officers who escorted him denied seeing or hearing anything. They were placed on temporary leave, then quietly reassigned to different facilities. When investigators reviewed the logs, they noticed something odd. The van had gone off-route for 47 minutes, an unexplained detour on a remote rural road. No GPS data, no radio calls, just a blank space on the map, and a dead inmate in the back seat. The autopsy listed the cause of death as manual asphyxiation by an unknown assailant. The case remains unsolved. No charges were ever filed. But rumors, oh the rumors, refused to die. Some believe Marcus's murder was a hit, orchestrated from within the prison system, a silencing, a revenge plot, tied to everything Lisa had left behind in those journals. Others believe it was one of the guards, someone still loyal to her, someone who saw Marcus as the virus, not just medically, but morally. Then there's the theory, no one says aloud, but everyone whispers, that Lisa Caldwell didn't die quietly, that her story didn't end in that hospital room, that someone, somewhere, read those journals and decided to finish what she couldn't. In the end, this wasn't just about sex, or betrayal, or even HIV. It was about something much bigger: power, who holds it, who gives it away, and what it costs to take it back. A respected prison warden, a manipulative inmate, a loyal officer caught in the middle, 3 lives, gone. One system, exposed. But with all the fallout, all the headlines, and all the pain, a question still lingers in the silence. Who's really to blame? Was Lisa Caldwell a predator, or a victim of her own loneliness? Was Marcus Dean a master manipulator, or just another man shaped by a broken system? Was Daryl Prince protecting someone he loved, or blindly obeying a corrupt chain of command? There were no winners here, just bodies, just silence, just consequences no one could stop once they started. And behind every twist, behind every lie, was a single emotion no one dared to admit: desperation, not for freedom, not for justice, but for connection, for validation, to be seen, to be wanted. I never meant to hurt anyone. I just wanted to feel wanted. Was justice served? What would you have done in Lisa's position? Would you have walked away, or would you have crossed the line for someone who made you feel alive again? Tell us below. And if this story shocked you, wait till you see the next case we're covering, because in the world of power, secrets, and control, sometimes the truth doesn't set you free, it buries you.